So you've completed the interview process for a job, and what's next? If you've just completed the interview process, you might have the following questions. How long does it take for the hiring manager or the recruiter to get back to you with either a job offer or a rejection? What should you expect to do after the final interview? If you're offered the job, what sorts of questions should you ask when you accept? If you're offered the job, what do you do if the compensation isn't what you were hoping for, and how do you negotiate? If you're not offered the job, how do you respond and request feedback? And if you're not offered the job, how do you move forward with your job search after that rejection? Hey, I'm Abby, and welcome back to the Life Work Balance YouTube channel. Huge shout out to Lindsay Macklin, who left a comment on one of my posts and asked exactly these questions. So thank you to Lindsay for inspiring this video, and congratulations to Lindsay because she let me know that she got a job after watching my videos and using some of my tips. If you're like Lindsay and you have questions on the job search process, leave me a comment on my videos or some of my community posts, and I will do my best to make sure that I can create a video just to answer those questions. So let's just jump into it. Let's answer some of these burning questions. Let's say that you have finished the interview process for a job and now you're wondering what to expect next. Well, first and foremost, congratulations on making it this far in the hiring process. It's likely that you are among tens, if not hundreds of people who applied for the job, and you were able to not only make it through the first round of interviews, but maybe second or even third or more rounds of interviews, and you really were able to leave a good impression with the hiring team. So if you've made it this far, congratulations. And even with that congratulations, what is next? When it comes to understanding how long you might have to wait to hear back from the hiring manager or recruiter, there's no tried and true, straightforward answer. It really is completely dependent on the person who is responsible for the interview process, responsible for the hiring, and even the organization. There is no standard for this timeline. You might have a hiring manager who gets back to you minutes after your final interview, or several days, maybe even several weeks after your interview. In order to prevent wondering how long you might have to wait to hear back from them, I highly recommend asking the following questions at the end of every interview. These questions are: what are the next steps in the process, and when can I expect to hear from you? Not only does that let you know if maybe there's an interview next, or if it's moving into a background check or reference checks, or if it goes straight to offer, but it also asks the hiring manager to give you a timeline so that you know when to expect to hear back from them. Once they've responded with their answers to those questions, then I want you to ask the following question. If I don't hear from you within that time frame, what is the best way for me to reach out to you for a status update? So again, you're looping back to them and you're just reaffirming that it is A, okay to reach out to them, and B, you're figuring out the best method to reach out to them. Maybe they would want a phone call. Maybe they would want an email. This is really just giving you the information that you need to ensure success after the step that you've just completed. So I recommend asking those questions at the end of every interview so that you know what to expect when it comes to that waiting period. Sometimes it might take the next business week. Sometimes the interviewer will say, we're going to make a decision at the end of the day, so you should know by tomorrow. When you get that timeline and when the recruiter or the hiring manager has to actually commit to the time frame, it actually will probably make the process go a little bit faster. And if you don't hear from them within that time frame, they've basically just given you permission to reach out to them for that status update. However, this is sometimes the period where candidates can be ghosted. Hiring managers, if they are conflict avoidant, might just avoid reaching out to you and letting you know that you didn't get the job. Do not wait around. Do not put all of your eggs into this basket. If you put all of your eggs into this basket, you're setting yourself up for possible disappointment, whether it's actually getting that rejection or getting ghosted altogether. It also causes you to lose momentum with the job search process. If you put all of your eggs into this job basket and you don't get it, then you might feel like you have to start from square one. So it's best to continue the job search process, continue applying to jobs and continue interviewing so that you don't lose that momentum. It's also possible that you could miss out on other exciting opportunities that are really good fits for you. So if you are putting all of your eggs in the basket of this job, you could be missing those other opportunities. Who knows? Maybe during this waiting process, you find a job that is a better fit for you with an organization that is a better fit. If you just wait around for this job to get back to you, then you would never know that you have missed out on that other opportunity. So keep applying, keep interviewing. Do not lose momentum. And that really leads me into the second question that Lindsay asked, which is, what do you do after that final job interview? Well, there's two parts to this. First, for this specific job, make sure you do the following. 1, send a follow-up thank you. I have a video all about this. In fact, I put together a playlist with all of the resources that can help you with this post-interview phase. So I've linked to the playlist in the description box below. I've linked to the individual videos in the description box below as well. And I've added a card up top with a link to this specific video. No matter what, after any interview, you absolutely must send a thank you. You want to take advantage of any positive interaction that you can have with the hiring team, the hiring manager, or the recruiter. So sending a thank you and a follow-up thank you after your interview is a great way to leave a positive, lasting impression on the interviewer or the interview team. So absolutely, no matter what, send a follow-up thank you. This will likely be in the form of an email, but it could also be in the form of a handwritten note. If this is the final interview, an email is probably more time efficient. So if you're wanting to leave that positive impression quickly, an email will suffice. The second thing that you will want to do after this specific interview, especially if it's the last one, is start thinking about who you might ask for references. It's pretty standard that reference checks happen as a part of the hiring process. You'll likely go through a background check and a reference check. So you want to start thinking about who you might list as your references. Again, I have a whole video about how to ask someone to be your reference, and I even provide you with an example email on how to ask them. So I highly recommend, if you haven't watched that video already, please check it out. I've linked to that in the description box below, and it's also in that playlist with recommendations on what to do after the interview process. Once you've written your thank you email or your thank you note and you've thought about your references, it's also time to think about what you want out of this position. So think about your desired compensation, which includes your salary, what types of benefits you're hoping you'll get out of this, what type of PTO or time off policies they might have. Do they have health insurance? And if so, do you need to go under the company's plan? Do they have wellness programs? Are you going to have to travel for work, whether it's actually for your job or to commute into the office? Do they have a remote option? Do they have a hybrid option? Or do they have a requirement to be in person? So start thinking about what sorts of things you want out of this job if it hasn't already been discussed as a part of the interview process. Then you can start to use those thoughts to formulate the questions that you will ask if you're offered the position. So those are the things that you should start doing after the interview process for this specific job. But the second thing that you should do kind of in general, which I already mentioned before, is to continue the job search and interview process for other jobs. Again, keep that momentum going. Don't put all of your eggs in this basket. Keep applying and keep interviewing. Now that we've talked about what things you should do after the interview, but before you've received either the job offer or you've been rejected, now let's talk about what to do in either of those circumstances, if you're offered the job or if you're rejected from the job. So first, if you're offered the job, celebrate. Yay! It's so exciting that you have been offered this position. And once you have celebrated the job search process being over, it's time to think about what questions you should ask now that the job has been offered to you. So the first question to ask is, what are the next steps? Is there a background check that you're going to have to go through? Will they be doing reference checks? Hopefully you've already prepped which references you plan to ask so that you don't have to waste time in that aspect. Ask the hiring team or the hiring manager when they would like you to start. If you are unemployed, then that gives you a good time frame of what the next couple of days or weeks might look like for you. And if you are employed, remember that it is best practice to give at least a 2-week notice with your current job. So even if the new job wants you to start tomorrow, you may need to give that 2 weeks notice to your existing job. I also recommend after my own personal experience, take off a couple of days between your current job and your new job. Even if it is the weekend, you will want to give yourself some time to just relax, refresh, rejuvenate before you start this new job. Jumping from one job into another might make sense from a logistical standpoint, but really from a mental health standpoint, I would highly recommend taking a couple days off in between. So understand when they want you to start and also understand when you want to start. The next thing you should be asking about are benefits. You probably know if this is a benefited position or not. If not, this is a great time to clear that up. And if this is a benefited position, ask the hiring manager or the recruiter or whoever is giving you this good news to send you either a benefits summary or a brochure about the benefits that are offered through the organization. What benefits are you going to be entitled to as an employee of this organization? And that will give you a good idea of kind of what to expect during the first week of onboarding. Are you going to be offered health insurance? Are there multiple health insurance plans that you need to do some research on? Are they going to offer you a matching program for your retirement accounts? What is their PTO policy? Having all of this information is really beneficial knowledge, not only for you in the job, it will also be a good bucket of information for you to start to use for possible negotiation if the salary isn't as high as you were hoping. Another question that you want to ask is about the schedule and the work location. Again, if this hasn't been discussed during the interview process already, you will absolutely want to ask it now that you've been offered the position. What day and time do they expect you to start? Are they expecting you to start on a Monday? Are they expecting you to start on a Wednesday? Are they expecting you to start at 7 a.m. in the morning or 8 a.m. in the morning? So asking the day and time for your expected start date is really important to clear up. You'll also want to confirm if this job is remote, if it is in person, or if it is hybrid. If it's hybrid or remote, how will you get the equipment in order to be hybrid or remote? And then 2 additional questions to kind of think about that you should be asking once you've been offered the job is who is on your team and how will you get to know them? Gallup, who is a organizational development research-based firm, has done years of research on the benefits of having a best friend at work. So in order for you to truly be successful in this new job, you have to connect with the people that you'll be working with. So you'll want to make sure that you have the opportunity to meet, get to know, and connect with your new team. So asking who these people are, so you can maybe connect with them on LinkedIn before you start, and how you will get to know them during your actual job will be important information so that you can be as successful as possible. And the final question that you should be asking, if it hasn't already been discussed, is compensation. Can the hiring manager, the interviewer, or the recruiter, whoever it is that gave you this good news, give you the anticipated starting salary or starting hourly rate? If they haven't given you this already, if this hasn't been discussed during the interview process yet, now is a great time to ask that. You want them to give you the first number so that you can use that for negotiation. Which leads me into Lindsay's next question that she asked, which is what do you do if the compensation they've offered you is lower than what you were hoping for? And how do you negotiate? Well, I've got a couple of videos on how to negotiate your salary. One of those videos focuses solely on how to answer the interview question about what your anticipated or expected salary is. That's really important to watch. It still kind of is relevant to this post-interview process. But I also have that one video that is exclusive to how to negotiate your salary. It gives you 6 tips on how to negotiate. So I've linked to that in the description box below, and it's included in that playlist with videos that can help you once you finish the interview process. So what do you do if the salary is lower than you were hoping for, and how do you negotiate? Well, first you have to ask if it is negotiable. Hopefully there was a salary range listed on the job posting. If so, you can refer back to that. And you want to prepare your reasons as to why you believe you deserve a higher salary. Refer back to your education, refer back to your experience. How are you unique and what can you bring to the table that entitles you to that higher rate of pay? You also need to be prepared for the hiring team or the interviewer or whoever it is who's giving you this news to tell you that it is not negotiable and that there is no wiggle room. There are some industries where this is the case, like public sector work and government work. Sometimes, even if there is a salary range listed, that is the entire range for anyone in that position, and they might be restricted to a small budget that only allows them to hire someone at this specific rate. So if that is the case, have some other options available when it comes to negotiation. Maybe you can ask for them to increase the rate at which they match your contributions to your retirement accounts. Maybe you can ask to start with a bank of PTO or time off rather than starting from zero. Maybe you can negotiate the rate at which you accrue time off or PTO. Maybe their organization has people starting to accrue about 10 days a year, and if you've been there for 3 years or more, you can accrue 15 days a year. So maybe you can start at that higher accrual rate. Maybe if they can't meet you in the middle with any of those, maybe they can give you a flexible schedule where you work different hours or different days. So there are many options that you can consider when it comes to negotiating your total compensation. Total compensation is not just your salary. It's all of these other things that go into that. So if your salary that has been offered to you is lower than what you've been hoping for, and it is not negotiable, there are some other things you can ask about to see if it is negotiable. If none of it is negotiable, if you are applying to an organization that is stuck in very rigid budget or policies that do not allow for that sort of thing, then it's time for you to make the decision on if you want to accept this job or not. You need to compare your core values, the things that are important to you, to the organizational core values. You need to evaluate if this job is going to open up other opportunities for you when it comes to career growth and development. And if you believe that you identify really well with the organization, you like the team, you like your potential manager, you see this as opening up other opportunities, then maybe having a salary that's lower than what you wanted or a more standard compensation package that isn't negotiable is worth taking this job and getting access to those other opportunities than it is to say no to the job. There also might be some circumstances where you choose to say no to this offer because it does not give you what you're looking for and what you need in order for you to financially and maybe even mentally support yourself. Ideally, salary conversations will come up before you've been offered the job. Some hiring managers do not like to discuss it until they offer the job, but really, it should be in not only your best interest, but also the hiring team's best interest to have the salary and compensation discussion before you're offered the job. Because if you get to the point where you're offered the job and the salary and the compensation is way lower than what you are willing to take, then you will choose to say no, and this whole process will have been a waste of your time and a waste of their time. So ideally, the salary conversation comes up way before you're offered the job. And in that case, you're not blindsided and neither are they if you are not able to take the job or if the salary is way too low. But again, remember, some companies and organizations have very little wiggle room when it comes to negotiation. Most hiring managers will do what they can to get you the best salary and the best package. If they really want you, they will do everything that they can to meet you where you're at. However, some organizations have policies in place that make this almost impossible for the hiring manager to have any flexibility with what that looks like. So just know that that might come up. There might be no wiggle room for negotiation. And then it's up to you to decide if this position is worth it or not. So those are things that you will have to do if you are offered the job. Let's say that worst case scenario, you're not offered the job. If you are not offered the job, the first thing that you need to do is request feedback. So how do you go about this? First, thank the person who is giving you this rejection for the opportunity to interview and get to know them and their organization. Be appreciative and grateful for the opportunity. If you come off as appreciative and grateful, they will probably be more willing to give you feedback than if you are angry and upset with them. They are likely just the messenger. Even if they are a decision maker, there's probably a reason as to why you were not selected, and it would be nice to know what that reason was. So be appreciative, be grateful for the opportunity, even if it hurts, and ask for feedback. When you're asking for feedback, My tip is to instead ask the person for advice rather than feedback, because the word advice can feel different than the word feedback. Ask the person for their advice for your future interviews. Ask them a question like, do you have any advice for me on what I can do differently in my future interviews moving forward? Am I missing any important education or experience where if I had had that important experience or education, I would have been eligible for the job? Was there something that was a deciding factor between me and the person you ended up moving forward with? And if so, would you be willing to share that feedback with me? Was there anything that I could have done differently to change your mind? Those are some really hard questions to ask and even hard questions to answer. So hopefully, fingers crossed, if you ask those questions of the recruiter or the hiring manager or whoever is giving you this feedback, they are able to respond transparently, openly, and honestly with you. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll just say the blanket statement of, we found someone who is a better fit for the position. Even if they're not giving you that direct feedback, still thank them for it, and now it's time to move on. So how do you move on after you've been rejected with your job search process? Well, I actually have 2 videos specifically on how to stay positive and motivated and resilient during the job search process, even if you've been rejected. So if you haven't watched those videos yet and you've received some rejections in the past, I highly recommend you check them out. Again, they're included in that playlist of things that you can do after your final interviews, and I've linked to them in the description box below. So one of the first things that you can do when it comes to moving forward after you've been rejected is to keep your positive mindset. Think about this as an opportunity to practice your interview skills and to really hone them for the next opportunity. There are probably tens, if not hundreds of applicants for this interview process, and you made it into the interview process. And even though you haven't made it to the hiring stage of the process, you were one of the top candidates of this entire process. So that's something to be proud of. And this whole interview process is great experience and is a great opportunity to get better at interviewing and applying to jobs. You also want to take any feedback from the hiring team, the interviewers, or the recruiter seriously. For example, if they give you feedback that you were not dressed very professionally during the interview process, and that was one of the things that was a deciding factor for them because they were worried about what it would be like for you to show up when interacting with customers or clients, that feedback needs to be taken seriously. You need to reevaluate the type of attire that you might be wearing during the interview process for future interviews. You need to make sure that you're going to make a positive first impression. And if your appearance and what you're wearing is one of the things that deterred you from getting the job, that is something to take very seriously. Now, that is just an example. That might not be the reason why you were rejected from this job. But if you've asked for feedback and they've given you feedback, take that feedback seriously and integrate that feedback into your next application and interview process. The goal is to do better with each interview that you participate in. The other thing that you may need to do is maybe reevaluate your job application and interview strategy to begin with. Maybe you need to reevaluate your interview preparation strategy. So there are certain things that you may need to reevaluate if you feel like you're continually getting rejected after the interview stage. Something is not working for you when it comes to communicating that you are the perfect candidate for these positions. So reevaluating your strategy is something that you might have to do in order to ensure that you are as effective as you can be during this process. So again, when it comes to finishing the interview process and that waiting period to hear if you've been rejected or offered the job, there are several things that are important for you to consider. So I hope this video has provided some clarity on what those things are. If you found this helpful, if you've liked my videos and my content, please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell icon so that you can be informed of any information that I might be sharing coming up. It also really helps me when it comes to being successful here on YouTube and being able to reach and help people with their job search process. So if you're able to hit that subscribe button and the bell, I would be so appreciative. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or ideas on things that you're wondering about for the job search process, or even questions about what to do after your final interview, please put them in the comments box below. I respond to every comment that comes through, and I will get back to you as quickly as I can, and I might even make a video based on the questions that you ask. Thanks so much for watching. I so appreciate your support, and I'll see you next week.